Hey, what's up, classic movie fans? My name is Rick 9G. Welcome to the 9G Monster Special. We've been looking at some of the classic Universal monsters. I've already covered Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy, Invisible Man, and now Creature from the Black Lagoon. Now, I've enjoyed all of these movies thoroughly for many different reasons, and I think Creature from the Black Lagoon sticks out as one that's very unique. The environment is completely different. We don't have the castles, we don't have those tombs, those coffins, nothing like that. There is no werewolf that's going to bite you. This is something from the water. One could say it's a precursor to something like the movie of Jaws, where there's something in the water. This film, coming from 1954, is often regarded as maybe not in the same line of Dracula and so forth, but nevertheless, it's the first of its kind to cover something like this creature from this Black Lagoon. Now let's start with the creature itself. The creature was played by two different stuntmen, and they were used depending on where the creature was. Anytime the creature was filmed underwater, well, they would use Rico Browning. He was very, very proficient in swimming and had the perfect ability and agility to get any single shot that they needed. He was a professional diver and a swimmer as well, and he was required to hold his breath for up to 4 minutes at a time when he was underwater in this Gilligan character. Now, whenever the creature came out of the water, he was played by a different man, and this was Ben Chapman. Now, this is important to note because whenever we have Ben Chapman, or as the creature when he was outside, basically on land, there was a darker suit that was used, and then the lighter suit was used for Rico Browning for the times when he was underwater to, of course, make it a lot easier for him to swim. Now, there was a logic for what they were trying to do. They had two different men in two different suits with different abilities. Now, one of the things that they were very mandatory, very strict about was making sure that there were no air bubbles that were seen from the mouth or the nose of Rico Browning when he was filming underwater. That is because they thought, well, the monster itself has gills, and the air would have to travel through them, and therefore there was no real need for the air bubbles, kind of like a real fish, if you could imagine. So the costume itself had no air tank, and he had to hold his breath for so long, which made it difficult to film a lot of scenes, but then again, he was a professional. Now, it's surprising to hear that Rico Browning and Ben Chapman never met during the making of the film. They met afterwards, conventions, things like that. But Browning's underwater scenes were filmed in the state of Florida, and Chapman's scenes were filmed in California. They met later on, as I mentioned, in a convention in Florida 20 years later, which is unbelievable to think of. The film itself was in black and white, but it was originally produced in 3D. Now, going and talking about the main characters, the main men in the film, other than the creature, played by Richards, that is two Richards, Richard Carlson and Richard Denning. Carlson played David Reed, and Richard Denning played Dr. Mark Williams. They're both doctors, in fact. Now, there was a bit of a mnemonic that I came up with so that you can remember who is who. Richard Carlson has the D, darker hair. His name is D, David, and it's easier to think that he had two tanks, not one, but two tanks on his back when he would go scuba diving, and that is also a D, so a double tank. So David, double, and dark hair, as opposed to Richard Denning, who had the lighter hair. His name was Mark, and he had only one tank. Now, that was purposeful of having Reed and Williams, the two characters, have two tanks versus one tank, so you could tell them apart in the underwater scenes. Remember, this is all HD footage versus what you saw in the theaters at the time, which wasn't. So it was a lot harder to tell the difference. I know a lot of you may be thinking, well, what happened to the suit, the creature suit? Well, Forrest J. Ackerman, he's known as a horror and science fiction writer for this magazine. He bought the mask and the claws of the creature's costume from a younger man who had once used them as a Halloween costume, believe it or not. That sounds like the worst idea ever. Now, these costume pieces were discarded by Universal after the production had finished on the 3 films. Now, of course, that's Creature from the Black Lagoon and the sequels. You may think, why? Well, think about it. Once they're done with something, they move on to the next project. It's all about making that profit, right? Now, they later recovered the costume pieces in the studio's dumpster. Yep, you guessed it right, in the studio's dumpster by the janitor himself, who thought the ensemble would make a good Halloween costume again for his son. Now, other costume pieces were not long ago sold at an auction by Bud Westmore, who was an assistant to Millicent Patrick, the original designer of the costume. So it's good to know that at least the costume is in good hands. Now, this is a pretty funny story having to do with Rico Browning, the underwater creature stuntman. He was underwater filming some scenes when he had an emergency bathroom visit that he had to make. So he got out of the water for several minutes and he breached in his full costume next to some unsuspecting people, a mother and her young daughter, and they were on a nearby shore. They did not know what was going on. Browning said that they fled in terror once they saw him, and he said, well, they just took off, and that's the last he ever saw of them. A part of me thinks that he enjoyed people being scared, because I would have said, hey, it's okay, it's a costume, but I guess they ran too fast. Now you may wonder, how did they get the appearance for the creature, or at least the inspiration? Well, it was based on an old 17th century woodcut of two bizarre creatures called the sea monk and the sea bishop seen here. Now these creatures, the final head was based on that of the sea monk, but the original discarded head was based on that of the sea bishop. Did they make the right choice? What do you think? Now, the beautiful actress in this film, Julie Addams, did something that was pretty incredible. Now, she stated that she was not knocked out in this scene where she was being carried into the cave by the creature. Rather, she claimed that she had scraped her head against the plaster wall of the cave while the stuntman was carrying her. Now, why did this happen? Well, neither of them had good visibility while filming the scene. The scene called for Addams to pretend to be unconscious in the creature's arms, which meant that her eyes were closed. And the stuntman himself in that suit could barely see out of the creature's mask, which had very limited visibility. Now, I think that there is a big parallel between this film and Steven Spielberg's inspiration for Jaws, because the director Jack Arnold claimed that his main goal in making this film was to create a sense of dread. He said that it played upon the fear, the basic fear of people, that what might be lurking below the surface of any body of water. You know that feeling where you're swimming and something brushes your legs down there? It scares you. It scares you so much, and you may wonder, what was that? It's the fear of the unknown. And he decided to kind of exploit that fear and use it in this film, and I would think rather successfully. What do you think? Do you like Jaws? Do you like this film? How would you rate it? And how would you rate this film versus the others, like Dracula, The Mummy, Frankenstein, and the others that I've covered? Was it more of a dreadful film for you? Did you feel sorry for the creature at all? Or did you detest the creature? I would love to know your thoughts down below. We'll see you next time. I appreciate all of your love and support. If you have not subscribed, you've seen the video to this far, and you've been watching for so long, you may have heard me say it, but it's absolutely free to be a subscriber, and you can't imagine how much it does help out the channel. We're on our way to 150,000 subscribers, so if you could subscribe and help us get to that point, it would really mean a lot. Don't forget, be hopeful. Thank you to everyone for their support, especially my Diamond tier patrons: Greg S., Ricky, Sally N., Citizen Kane 359, David D., Kevin K., Vito L., and honorary patron Verbal Volley. If you want to be listed here, make sure to check out the links in the description. Thank you.